Hello, welcome to day 30, which is my final day of committing to working on this for 30 days straight, basically, other than I think like 2 or 3 days off where I just was with my family. So I started working on Freeport. I wanted it to look pretty cool. It has a dock where the boat comes from Ocean of Tears, and then it has this rock cliff in it, and there's a secret passage over to kind of like the evil side of Freeport. So I built that in, and I'll just show you what it looks like. Warp 7. So you swim into this underground area. I don't know if that's like a grotto or what that'd be considered. And then you can kind of come up into this area. There's some holes in the ceiling, so you can see the mountain passes above and all of that. And I don't know much about Unreal Engine performance yet, so this could actually be a really non-performant area. I don't know. I'll have to mess with it. But then I built this little tunnel, which will be the entrance by one of the gates of Freeport. So that's what I have currently going on here in Freeport. And then I spent most of the time working on enemy AI, like I said. So we'll just teleport over there. So I fixed the orc mesh. I got a new orc mesh. Sorry, the camera speed's crazy. So I have this new orc mesh, no horns, much better. Looks meaner anyway. Built a goblin mesh, which came out pretty nice. Kind of looks like Gollum in a way to me. And then this Banshee, the Banshee AI meshes were terrible. So this one, the jaw doesn't quite line up with the chin, if you look. And then the hands are kind of funky. So we'll see. I don't know if I'm going to use that. And then I had an AI ogre made. So this is kind of like what it gave me for an ogre. So on the caster logic, I wanted something where the caster would always run to line of sight if you interrupt it, and they're casting a spell. They'll always come back and get line of sight, and they'll stop what they're doing to get line of sight. So if you come into line of sight while they're aggroed, they'll actually, so while they're kind of like running and then you come into line of sight, they immediately stop and start casting again the second they can see you, instead of going to that point where they're trying to target. As you can see right there, I added a little sound effect. So if you're hearing a beep, I don't think I'm sharing it, but if you are, that's what that is. I also added in a health mechanic for the enemy, so I can press X to do damage to the enemy, and I added that little animation, and we see their health is 80. EverQuest has a regen system per tick, so that's where you see that 85 now. So I'm giving this enemy 5 hit points every 6 seconds, which is the time of a tick in EverQuest, what we consider a tick in game. In a game engine, a tick is constantly, so 60 frames per second, 60 ticks a second. But for the sake of EverQuest, we have this regen function. Anyway, if I damage the enemy enough, below 40%, so what it is 30% health, they'll run away. And then at 10% health, they'll walk away. And they're just trying to get away from the player. They're looking for the distance spot furthest from me, and that's where they're pathing to. And they're also trying to get out of sight. And then if they heal, so he healed from regen, they'll re-enter combat, as you can see right there. So we hurt him again, and then we'll knock him down to 0, which I don't handle death currently. So it's actually at 5, which is nice. So now you can see they're walking away. And they'll just try to avoid me no matter what, get to that point, and then avoid. I don't have this interrupting, so they correct if I pass them and path in front of them. But I think that's kind of good enough for them to wander, because usually in EQ, you're just kind of behind them, like hitting them or casting spells. So anyway, I did all that logic, and I can kind of show that. So in the enemy base, this is kind of complex, and it took me a bit, and I don't know if this is the best way to handle it, but we have our any damage event, which is all set up here, and we'll handle if they're dead later. And this is just handling the damage to the enemy. So we're just grabbing their current health, we're subtracting the damage from it, and then we're clamping it so that it can't go below 0 currently for enemies. And then we're taking in the max, which is the maximum value of health. And then we're setting current health to that. We're checking if it's less than or equal to 0. If it is, we set them as dead because they're at 0 or less. And I'm just printing, this is just printing the current health that we saw earlier. And if it's not, then it does this start timer by event, and it sets the aggro timer here. And what that is this is aggroed custom event that I built, which currently is just handling regenerate, but this will be able to handle everything like which target to attack and how they're prioritized and their hate score, all of that stuff. So whatever we want them to do while it's aggro, this will also handle so let me just get into this for a sec. So here's our regenerate. So I built this regenerate function, which is kind of wild looking, but I am also printing some stuff in it. So what happens here is it fires off and it sees if their health is below 0 or equal to 0. And if it is, it just stops this timer, because that's how we clear this timer. This handles the looping and has a duration, and you have to exit a loop or else it's not performance. So we do that by using this clear and invalidate timer by handle and passing this handle that we set up here. So anyway, if they have above 0 hit points, we check to see if their current health is less than their maximum health at this branch. If not, then we just clear the timer because they've fully healed. So we don't need to heal anymore. And then next time they're damaged, it will run that check again and then start regenerating again. But that way they're not just regenerating the entire time, only if they need it. If they are not at full health, then we set this state of is regenerating, and then we just add their current health here, their regeneration amount, and their current health. And then we take that and we clamp it. So then we have a minimum of 0, and their max health is their max. So we won't heal above the max. And so it will either return their current health plus regen or max health, whichever is higher, when they're at, say, if they heal to something like 96 and they have 100 hit points and they regen 5 hit points, it will just return 100, basically. So then we set that and then we print it out. So I built that. And then we have the out of combat heal. So this is aggroed, this event here. We'll also handle that because we'll have a timer that fires to see how long it's been since they were last damaged. So I believe how I'll work it is I'll have a time for when they get their last damage, and we'll just update that and we'll check that. And then if that time to current time is probably like a minute or 30 seconds, we'll figure it out. Then the enemy will start going into this out of combat heal. And the out of combat heal is a percentage based heal, and it's pretty big. I don't remember what it is right now. It's like 10 or 25%. But anyway, they'll heal a bunch. So that's the plan moving forward. And I want them to also return to spawn. And so we'll figure that out. It's kind of a little tricky to do that location. I'm still grasping how to work with blackboards, the AIC, the blueprint, and the behavior tree all together. And I'm just getting better at it. But I want to know how to handle that perfectly so that I can have their spawn location and they'll return to spawn here in this out of combat heal logic. Not in this function, but in that same chain. They'll go back to their spawn via the behavior tree, and then they'll also do the out of combat heal. So if you run out of a zone and stuff, that's when that would kick in. That's when the monster would leash back. And that will really only matter for multiplayer. In single player, zones will probably just repopulate every time you load them. So you don't have to wait for a week to fight Nagafin or anything like that. You can just load Nagafin's lair and Nagafin will load. If any of you don't like that idea, let me know and we can work on that. It's a little more complex, and I'm not sure that it adds anything to the game, especially for testing purposes. I'd rather just everything kind of spawn when you zone into a zone and just be up, and then have a respawn of 6 minutes in case you want to farm a zone and test that out. But that's where we're at now. So if you want to keep watching, I'm going to just kind of run through what we have, I guess a little bit, just zone-wise. And then otherwise, you can just wait for something else. Sorry, I always click Antonica. So we have Akanon done. We have Butcher Block. We have Mistmore. We have Crushbone, which I haven't updated because my brother's working on that. That's why that one's still dated. We have Dagnors, and the water doesn't show up when I do these unless I mess with it or play it. We have Unrest, Bellwith, Greater Fade Arc, which is the biggest zone. So this sucker's big. Caladim. Kedge Keep, completely underwater. Lesser Fade Arc here. Ocean of Tears, which I love. And Steam Font. So I'd say not too bad for 30 days. We have some different enemy types, a lot of behavior tree logic. I made a lot of materials, a lot of custom meshes, a lot of level design stuff. And I've just learned quite a bit over 30 days. I feel pretty accomplished. Definitely know a lot more than I did a month ago. So thank you for tagging along, and all feedback is welcome. So if you have any ideas or any complaints or anything, just let me know. Thanks.